welcome. Thank you for coming. This is the last session of SEAHO, as you know, so we're really excited that you showed up to learn about publishing. This is really awkward, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you what on earth I'm doing. This is the room where they're live streaming the presentations. So we have to talk into a microphone that is going into that box over there, but it's not projecting to you guys. So that's not strange at all. But we will do it because yay. But also know that we are being recorded. So I'm not really sure where that is, but I assume the backs of your heads will be on it. Or if you speak or something, be aware that you're being recorded. And I think that goes onto the SEAHO website. It's going to be available for people to check out throughout the year. So I hope our presentation is not horrible. But anyway, so we're here to talk about publishing, and we want to give you a broad overview because there are a million different ways to get published, but we're going to give you some basic steps and tips to help you get started, okay? So some quick introductions. My name is Jeannie Hopper, and I'm an Associate Director for Residential Learning at the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss. And I also serve as the SEAHO Report Editor at the moment. I think I'm going to do one more edition before I hand it over to this lovely young woman. But anyway, I wanted to talk about this not only because I've been writing for the SEAHO Report for eons. I think I've been a part of the editorial board for 10 years. But I've also published in my previous life as an academic. My master's degree is in literature. And so if you want to look up my maiden name, I have some publications on Shakespeare and on the female Gothic in some literary journals out in the world. And I've also written a chapter for a higher education book, a compiled book. So, yeah.
My name is Briana Cresswell, and I'm a Residence Life Coordinator at Louisiana State University. My publishing process started in grad school with my thesis, and then as I became a professional, joined on the SEAHO Report and learned how to publish some more things there, and have branched out what I'm doing in my residence hall. And so I'm here to talk to you from an entry-level perspective of how you can still publish in your role as a grad or entry-level.
Perfect. All right, so let's get started. Obviously, we have to plug the SEAHO Report because that is our, role at SEAHO. So if you're not familiar with the SEAHO Report, it is a quarterly publication, which means we publish 4 times a year. The most recent edition, the winter edition, just came out earlier this week, so it's available on Guidebook. It's on the website. All those lovely things. And we publish all kinds of different information. So again, it's a magazine. It's not a journal. So we're publishing SEAHO News. We have committee reports in every edition. We have state and institution updates in every single edition. And we have feature articles. And feature articles are kind of what we mostly want to talk to you guys about. So that would be if you have a great idea or great something that's happening on your campus, you can write about that, and we will be happy to publish it in the SEAHO Report. It does have to be about housing, though. You'd be surprised. Some of the things that we get sent, and we're like, this has absolutely nothing to do with us. Thank you for submitting. But we are happy to take articles from all levels of staff. We have published undergraduate students, and we've published retired SHOs. So anywhere in between, anybody who wants to publish with us, as long as they have a tie to student housing in some way, shape, or form, and they have something great to say, we are happy to get them published. And in 2018 alone, we published 50 different authors, and we had 12 authors in the newest edition here for the winter edition. So that would be 62 that we've just done recently. So again, a really great opportunity to get some professional development and to get something really fantastic on your resume. So be sure to check out the SEAHO Report. All right, now we want to hear really quickly from you guys if you don't mind sharing with us. But how many of you guys have published before in any form? Yay, a couple, okay. And how many of you, so I'm assuming the rest of you haven't, but how many of you want to publish and know what you want to write? Like you have a great idea and you're like, I'm ready to go. Okay. How many of you have no idea what you want to write, but you're kind of like, I want to try this out. I'm interested enough to be here. Yay, okay. Um, when you hear this, I put this up here because my own staff, I try to get them to write all the time because I'm obnoxious like that. And whenever I push them to write, they're always like horrified. They get that look on their face like, so does publishing or writing, how do you feel when you're told you should write something or publish something? Are you excited by that? Are you terrified? Are you like, yes, or anybody? Yeah.
I think there's like this idea that to write something you have to be an expert, and I've been in housing for like 0 months.
Hey, that's right. You are an expert at being new.
Sometimes I just feel like the ideas that I might bring to the table aren't original or new or really lend any insight to anything significant. So I think that's probably what's holding me back.
Yeah.
Although I know that that's not probably valid, but
It's not valid. I'm glad you said that. No, that's a common thing that we hear, and my staff said that too. And I was like, you are an expert in your experience, and other people want to hear because what you're experiencing is very similar to probably what somebody else is experiencing. And we're going to talk about this. There's so many different types of ways to publish and different formats to publish in. You may not be an expert in something, so maybe you're not going to be published in the Journal of Higher Education. Great. But you could be published in something like the SEAHO Report or a blog or different things. So you just have to find what's right for you. Yeah. You want to share?
I was gonna say I do get excited with just like the creativity part of it. Like I'm not visually or aesthetically creative, but like words are my thing. And then the fear is just like, oh, grammar, I don't even remember that from school, and just the vulnerability of like having your thoughts like out there for other people
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
judge or whatever.
I love that you talked about grammar because that's another thing that a lot of people that holds people back sometimes from publishing. That's what we do. Like, I love grammar. Give me a semicolon. And I'm like, yes, you're my best friend. So we can fix that. I'm happy to go in and fix commas and fix colons for you guys. What I can't do is give you content. And so if you have an idea, and we're going to show you that you all have really great ideas, I know you do, you can write it and we can help you to make it seamless and make the sentence structure right and have your parallel, whatever. We can help you with that part. That's what our job is. Your job is to come to us with a really great idea and a good meat and a good subject matter. We can do the rest. That's why we're editors. Yay. Any other thoughts about publishing? Yeah.
So I just did a research-led publication with my professor, and he asked me in September, and I wrote with 2 individuals that had doctorates, and I was like, I'm barely a master's student. So I was like, I don't even have like a master's degree. How can my writing level match up to yours? And he just laughed and he was like, no, don't worry about it. But I think it was like more self-doubt where I was like, I am not qualified to be published because I just got accepted to grad school. So I think that's really where like the fear from like graduate students, maybe speaking on behalf of them, come from. Like, I'm 2 days into a degree. How can I be published?
Yeah.
So but then luckily I had a mentor that was like, just shut up and do it anyway. But that's where that hesitation is from.
I love that, and I love your mentor. I want to meet this person. No, I think that's right. And publishing as a group is a really great way to get past some of that fear and some of that self-doubt. And so we see that a lot in the SEAHO Report. I'll get an article, and there are 4 authors on it, and I'm like, fantastic. I'm happy with that. And oftentimes you'll have a higher up person and a bunch of graduate students or a bunch of entry levels who they've helped them. But you have to remember, everybody had to publish for the first time at some point in their careers. And so even the most well-renowned published person out there, I don't know who that is, but whoever that is, they at one point in time were also a first-time publisher. So, I mean, we all have to go through that. And soon you'll be old hat at this, and you'll be helping to mentor someone else. But thank you guys for sharing. We're going to hit on a lot of that stuff, and hopefully by the end of this, you're going to feel a lot better if you were worried about some of these things.
Yeah, so some learning outcomes that we have for you all today. Our number one learning outcome for you all is that you'll be able to identify a unique story that you have and that you'll have a desire to be able to share that story with others. The second outcome that we have is that you'll understand the publication process for various types of publications. So we are going to go over different publications, why those processes are different, and how to tailor your writing article so that when you submit to those publications, it will meet their guidelines. And then lastly, we want you to recognize positive publication behaviors and the tricks of the trade.
All right, so what to write? This is what I was talking about earlier. I feel like I'm blocking. Can y'all see it? Okay. We wanted to make sure that you guys understand how many different types of ways there are to publish. Oftentimes when you're thinking about it in your head, you're thinking of a beautifully researched scholarly article. And yes, those are out there and those are fantastic. But there are millions of other ways to publish. So you can write letters, opinion pieces, editorials, review papers, and those would be... I didn't put book reviews on there, but book reviews are also a really great way if you're dipping your toe into publishing for the first time. If you've read a really great book in a class or just for fun, write a review about it. A lot of journals love to publish book reviews. Research articles, which we've talked about. Proceedings papers. If you're going to a conference and they have... many conferences end with proceedings papers, so you're writing about the proceedings of the conference and the new information, the new scholarly findings that have come out of that conference. So many conferences will be looking for proceedings papers. Micro articles, those are the little short snippets that you're going to get on blogs and different things. And that list could go on and on and on. But basically, you're trying to figure out from your voice and what your story is, what the best format would be for what you want to tell. So the very first thing I wrote for the SEAHO report was I had a book club in my housing department, and I compared it to Oprah Winfrey's book club because I'm old and Oprah was still on the air and still had a very active book club at the time. And so I wrote a tongue-in-cheek article about housing book clubs and Oprah and all this stuff. That would never have been appropriate for a scholarly journal, but that's what I felt like writing about at that time. I was like, yeah, I'm going to world dominate like Oprah. And that was how my article read. And it was perfect for the SEAHO report, which is a magazine, which is more, it's a reader-friendly type of thing. You're going for a broader audience. That would not have flown in a different type of publication. So really look at what you're trying to write and find the right home for it. So do you want to talk about the types?
Yeah, so some more types that you might want to submit to, as Jeannie mentioned, scholarly journals, magazines, news. So people, when they think about the news, think like, oh, it can only be on television or maybe a newspaper in a New York Times or something like that, but you can publish in your community newspaper as well, or even your campus newspaper. It's important before you start publishing on these sites, though, to make sure that you're in guidelines with your university's communication standards. So those can be very different for universities, and so before you start publishing, make sure you connect with whoever that is, your assistant director, your communication department, and that they're okay with you putting your name on something with the university. That's super important. My first publication was actually a blog. I was a grad student working as an intern for NASPA, and I similarly felt I have nothing good to say. Everyone that works here is very important, and you do very important things, and I'm the intern. Do you need coffee? And so I was very, very nervous, but luckily had someone that told me, Briana, you are a grad student, write about your experience. And so I wrote about my experience as a graduate intern at NASPA, posted it online, and little did I know, at the next NASPA conference, several people came up to me, I read your article, can you tell me about NASPA? And I made friends. So I was like, I will tell you about my intern experience. Yes, you should apply. And it was super helpful. And I had that same experience later when I published an article in the SEAHO Report, my first one by myself, where I was walking through the hall and someone was like, read your article, dope. And I was like, dope. And so it's super exciting when you do get that confidence in yourself and you're able to write about something you've done and you're proud of. And you realize that that wasn't just a silly idea. Someone else really got value from that. Yeah.
Okay, so All of those different things are lovely. There are lots of options out there, but ultimately it's up to you. Do what works best for you. We've talked about this. What worked best for Briana at that moment was to write a blog about her personal experience. Way back in the day, before I had kids and a husband and a crazy job, I had time to sit down and write about Charlotte Bronte and Emily Bronte and Mary Shelley and the female Gothic, because that used to be my life, and boy was it great. Now, if I even think about the work that went into that and thinking about sitting down and actually writing something like that again, I will break out into hives. Like, absolutely not, because I'm not at that place in my life anymore, and that's okay. And so find what works for you, where you are, what we're going to work for your story and your voice. And it's going to be great. And no one is better than the other. I hate it when people do that. Any publication is a fabulous and great publication. Yay. All right. So we have a little activity for you guys to do. What we want you to do is to talk to somebody at your table or somebody that you know. And if you don't want to talk it out, that's okay. I understand the introverts in the room. Internalize it if you have to. But ask yourselves or your partner these questions. And as you're going through these questions, what we want you to do is to highlight potential article ideas. There are so many stories that you could tell. I was talking to Briana. Fun fact, by the way, we have been working together for a year on the SEAHO Report, and we just met for the first time on Wednesday. What? So we're email buddies, but now I know what she looks like. But anyway, so I asked her these questions when we were down in the lobby preparing for this on Wednesday. And through doing that, we came up with like 5 different things that she could still, I mean, she's already published many times, but that she could still publish on simply by asking these questions and saying, what's your favorite part of your job? Great, you should write about that. What's your least favorite part of the job? What do you hate about the job? Awesome, write about those frustrations, because guess what? Other people probably have the exact same freaking frustrations. Do you work with any special groups? She started talking about the first generation students she works with, and I was like, I want to read that because I'm trying to do that on my own campus. So these types of questions pop up different ideas. So if y'all would take a few minutes and talk to a partner or internalize it yourself and start coming up with some article ideas that you could have, okay? We're going to take about 7-ish minutes.
I'm Natalie. We're William and Mary. I'm an assistant. I just started as an assistant professor in the area.
I've been to that campus because SEAHO one year was in, and that was my first SEAHO ever.
Yeah, it was 2010.
Yeah, that sounds right. Okay, so, yeah, I know when
Yeah, that's awesome.
and I'm at FTC, which is in Fort Myers.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I did my grad work at Florida State. So,
Oh, okay. So then you're
yeah.
familiar with Florida stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm finishing up my dissertation, and
I'm in year 1 of my doc program, so.
we may have a faculty member in common. She used to work at UGA. Okay, and that's fine. She went to, I think she did her grad work at William and Mary, and then she worked faculty at UGA, and then William and Mary kind of like called her back. And
No,
so
we are totally redoing our curriculum, so I would likely, I'm in the statistics part of the coursework right now, so.
super fun. Yeah. I did a quant study, and so statistics is what's killing me to try to get through it. Yeah.
Awesome.
So I want to do something more with this dissertation and just be like, I put all this work into it, and it's just going to sit on the shelf somewhere. So that's why I think my dissertation is on RA supervision. So I feel like it's relevant, and there's not a lot of writing about RA supervision since like the 80s.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a little bit. A couple years ago came out with like a set of books, and the books were thematic, like on the right book. Right. And so there's some stuff in there, but not a whole lot. So that's something I'm thinking about writing about. What do you want to write about?
For dissertation.
No, for like just in general. Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like a lot of things I want to pull from my coursework, like I took an org management class,
Right.
and I'm like, thinking about like structural frames and how they intersect, conflicts, yeah, and I think about that book every day, in my workplace, and how conflict arises because of our different frames, so I'm really interested in that. And then like a couple of the other ones right now, for a class project, we just had to develop a new framework for leadership. That takes an existing theory but applies laws. None of them have inclusivity included, so we have to like add an inclusive element. Right. Like so that's also something on my mind. It's like, oh, I created a framework. Like, can I like push it out to be like tested? If that makes sense. So yeah.
And then what do you think you would write about for your dissertation?
I'm really interested, and I don't, there's no research, there's no guide, so I probably won't write about it, but it's a question that's bothering me.
Right.
So at William Mary, I'm considered highly privileged. So we have a very privileged student body, a lot of ideas around disservice and entitlement.
Right.
And so that plays out in the RA process because our buildings, a lot of our buildings don't have AC, and then we have brand new buildings. So, and
Placement is a challenge then.
correct. And so, like last year, I had 5 or 6 RAs who were like, well, I worked really hard. Why'd you put me in for me? I'm like, well, I worked really hard. I think we could make a vibrant, thriving team. Blah, blah, blah. She's like, so I'm being punished for being my job. Like, I deserve bigger position. So this idea is like, but at the same time, she's out rallying for social justice on campus. And so how does this idea of
Right.
like, I don't know how to articulate it, but like the idea
No, I know
of
exactly.
deservedness
Yeah.
play out among privileged population,
Right.
like, or privileged and affluent students, like this idea of deservedness, because our students are very woke, social justice, but if they don't get their way, like,
Right. And you're like, you realize how just because you don't do all our activities right now.
right, and so I'm really like trying to, yeah, I would like to do research around how that happens, why it happened,
Right.
factors that cause it, but there's no good research on the idea of deservedness in general.
Yeah.
So then to do that and that,
There wasn't a whole lot on RA supervision. It was on my faculty to look at counseling supervision.
oh, interesting.
Which is kind of like not right. And so you're right. If you pick a topic that is so either new or up and coming, it's going to be challenging to create that
Love
love
to read your like dissertation when it's done. Like I would just be really curious to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a business card?
I do.
Yeah, I can. You can get published all there.
Oh,
And
nice.
so like I could like send you a link to be like, yeah, whatever you want to.
No, I'm like realizing, and this sounds really dumb, but like as I'm starting to prepare for consul meetings with faculty, but like as I'm starting to look towards that, the more dissertations I read, the more I learn about like just to make sure.
Oh, yeah.
So I just enjoy reading it. So if it were actually relevant to my field, that would be even better.
So yeah, when you, or at least to my program when they started, they would be like, find like a master text that you're like looking to. And I kind of felt, when I was an English major, I was like, this is a lot more complicated.
Right.
But I found a couple on synergistic supervision, which is kind of like one of my friends. And so even having their like resources has been great for me because I can go look up all that paper. And then mine is quant, and so like there's no like frility to it. Like don't try to get creative, don't try to get like pretty, like just test, explanation, test. And so you have another text to look at, be like, oh, how did you? So I would definitely, when I started doing that, stuff like started moving quickly, and I got so organized.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I would definitely suggest like finding either something that like faculty recommends, because one of my faculty members did recommend another quant study to look at, or just like you said, like dissertations that have similar topics that you can. Because you're like, oh, these all work for me. You've got like a page of resources. Yeah, no, I'd be more than happy to send it to you. Someone over here, they can appreciate her. And so when I defended my perspectives, my first 3 chapters, her chair is on my committee, and so she wrote me, was like, hey, will you pass your first 2 chapters over to so-and-so? I was like, by all means. Like, if it saves someone some heartache, like, I'll do whatever. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, best of luck. So you're in yeah. And what is your more counseling-based program, or like?
So we're educational policy planning and leadership.
Okay.
but we are combined with K-12. So I'm the only higher ed person in my cohort, and because most of our classes are like develop your own curriculum, like based on who's in the class. Only one with 12 teachers, so only 6 students.
Right.
So I've had to really change my lens on like we did an article on mental health in middle school, and it just like hit me. I was like, oh my god, like these students will be on our campus in 5 years. We are not ready.
Yeah.
Like to have middle schoolers talking about mental health in this way and have this type of diagnosis.
Right.
And it just like hit me like a brick. So I'm starting to enjoy it a lot more.
Right.
But it took a little bit. It took a while to get there.
So your program sounds, because I wasn't in like the UGA, they call it SEAHO program.
Yeah,
which is not the traditional student affairs. I was in one of their Gwinnett campus, but I went to UGA, and you could pick your own cognate. So all of my like cognate courses were in the student affairs program. But yeah, I was like the only. I mean, there was someone at higher education, like they were doing academic affairs. So I always want the international scholarship.
All right, guys, wrap up your conversations.
Relevant. Yeah.
I loved hearing all the chatter. So who wants to share? Who wants to share with us what great ideas they have that they would like to share with the world with their written word? Yeah.
So my name is Caitlin Van Dyke. I'm a graduate student at Georgia Southern University. I'm a first-year grad, but I've been interested in publishing and writing for a little bit. I used to do it like way back in high school, but I'm like, Caitlin, let's do something else now. So something that I'm really interested in right now is specifically with. Do I need the mic? I'm sorry. Oh, That's okay.
All of our viewers have to be.
Right. So something that I'm really interested in for publishing purposes and writing it, I just have to find the time right now, is talking about empowering my returner students who are extroverted when their students do not want to build a community. I'm in a exterior corridor building with first-year students. The only thing that doesn't make it a full apartment for them is that they don't have their own kitchen. They have a kitchenette though, so some of them really like their microwave meals and they're good to go. So they really don't like to leave their spaces. They dodge emails from me, they dodge all of their group me messages, they mute everything. So really having that conversation. I have a really, really strong returner who sits in my office for like 2 hours a week, and she's like, I can't reach out to my students. Or like when we do our one-on-ones, our intentional interactions, we call them eagle chats. She's like, I can only get a hold of 10 of them. So she thinks that it's impacting her performance as an RA, which technically it is, but I know she's trying, so I don't want to hold that against her. But it looks like when you're looking at numbers that she only made like enough connections with a fourth of her floor. But I'm like, I know you're doing it, but how do I empower you as a returning student who really wants this community, but your students don't want it? So that's something that I really want to look into a little more.
And how many of y'all would read that? I would totally read that.
Yeah, actually, I'm Natasha. I'm also from Georgia Southern University, a graduate student. And so we actually just shut down a building in January, and this is my first year. So I had to shut my building down as a graduate student in my first year, and it was real weird. And so it's just an experience that I think would be really valuable to share from a graduate perspective. And I'm interested in writing it and doing it because my undergrad is actually a journalism major. So I'm like, I want to start using that. But yeah, so I just think it's a valuable experience that other people could learn from because it's something that happens everywhere.
Especially, I mean, right now, I feel like every time I look at higher ed news, there's another building being shut down for mold.
Yikes.
Yeah. I will talk about it 'cause we had
I was like, too soon. That's literally what just happened.
Hi everyone, I'm Chantel Taylor from Clayton State University. My idea was to talk about frustrations and how one of my grads, she and I have similar personalities, so a lot of times we clash sometimes, just like working through the day and like our flow of work. So we came up with a Codeword Kill, and that's kind of like our we pay attention to the warning signs when we're starting to build up that tension, and then we'll just say kill, step aside to our own office, debrief for a second, and then come back together, hug, and be like, I love you. And then like, all right, let's reset. Where were we? What needs to get done? And just like how to move forward.
I love that. It's almost like roommate agreement for staff.
One of mine is I'm a full-time doc student and work full-time, and so I'm also a first year. So talking about the experiences of doing that and why I did it, and so kind of, as Breezy was talking, a counter narrative of the story of don't do what I did and why I did what I did. And then the second one, I have it written. I just have to get permission to get it in to send it out. And it's, we didn't hire you for your identities. We hired you for the job. And so looking at how many times we say we're hiring people for identities and we want this diverse staff, but then when you get there, how are you supporting people with the different identities, and what does that look like, especially in res life when it comes to trauma and things of that nature?
So I'm currently at Virginia Tech, which is a predominantly white institution, but I'm supervised by a man of color and I supervise a woman of color. So I thought it would be interesting to write a piece about like supervision across races and what that can look like and some of the difficulties that one may encounter if they're falling into a position where that will be a reality for them, especially like white folks that are going to be in a position where they need to support those folks, especially when they're marginalized on their campus.
Hi, I'm Kendra Bumpus, and I am a second semester full-time doctoral student who left university housing after a 12-year stint. And I thought that would be pretty interesting to write about, and how you can still stay connected to where your roots are, i.e. housing, while still pursuing your advanced degrees, and the importance of that and how they open doors. And I thought that might be interesting.
Hi, I'm Coley. I'm from Western Carolina University, and I bonded with Georgia Southern immediately because I'm getting ready to close a building right now and then open one immediately in July, so I have a really busy summer. So writing about the facilities aspects, we have a lot of plumbing issues right now. I had a bat issue, like very weird things in my building currently, and then just jumping right into a new building and maybe similar things, might have plumbing issues too. So I'm thinking about doing that with my current colleagues.
And just to touch on that too, that's such a good idea with closing a building. I'm about to close a building, and there's so many different avenues that you can go from there. So for me, like closing my building, it's had over 50 years of history on LSU's campus. So how are we honoring that? What programs are we doing to honor the legacy of our building, but also to move forward with our new generation of students? But I could also talk about facilities needs, and I have an article coming out in the Talking Stick about that, and some things that we've done to help the facilities reputation. But yeah, so you can write about from different angles, opening a building. What is a key? What is a public partner private ship? I mean, yeah, not a private ship, partnership. But yeah, anyone else?
Hi, my name's Sarah Stayer. I also work at Virginia Tech. So something I was thinking about coming into this conference, but was reinforced by another session too, is the intersection between supporting students who report harassment and uncomfortability in our residence halls and students on the autism spectrum who may be contributing to that uncomfortability. And it's sort of negotiating how we validate and support and believe survivors in our work, but also realizing that a lot of our students simply might be insensitive to the needs of folks who don't read social cues in the same way as them or aren't neurotypical, and how we're not disadvantaging either of those groups and best serving them, because it's just tough. And I ran into a situation lately where it made me question, how I was responding to situations and supporting both students involved appropriately. And I suspect that we'll encounter that more moving forward in light of Me Too movement and survivors being empowered, while also knowing that more students on the autism spectrum are going to be coming onto our campuses, and making sure we're not blaming either of those parties for the experiences that they're having. And if anyone knows the answer to just let me know. Yeah.
I can't wait to read that to hear your answer.
Yeah. We'll see.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. We really appreciate you guys sharing with us. You are the best. But seriously, those were in what we took 7 minutes of brainstorming, and we ended up with a ton of really great ideas. And some of those are things I've never heard, and are very topical right now. And I would really love for you guys to actually do it. So, how do you do it? Woo! We're gonna tell you. Okay. So this is kind of a little flowchart of the steps in order to get published. Now, the caveat is every publication has a little bit of a different process. So I tried to take a bunch of different ones and narrow it down to a generalized, so this is the Jeannie Hopper version of how to get published, which is an overview that'll hit most of what's going to happen in whatever you have. So step number 1 is to find the right publication. So we've talked about that. There are lots of different kinds. You need to get out there and start reading. Start opening publications, seeing what is out there, and find the one that matches your voice and your content. Then you gotta write something. You gotta have your idea. You need to know what you're doing, and you need to write whatever it is that they need for their first step. You need to go ahead and write it. And writing is going to look different for everybody. We talked about if we should talk about how to write, and then we were like, I don't even know how to open that can of worms. It's a whole different presentation. When I write, I sit there, I brainstorm with my husband. I am a talker. I'm a rambler. And so I'll talk it out with him, and I'll make notes. And through my conversation, I end up with a really great idea and some really great talking points that I then turn into written points. But everybody's going to have a different method. So whatever works for you, just start writing. The third part is to actually submit your article or your abstract or your query. Depending on where you're publishing, they're going to ask for different things. So I have a few examples to show you. We'll go back to that chart in just a minute. I don't know if y'all can see this, but yeah. So this is the SEAHO website. If you go to SEAHO.org and you go to the Develop tab, it has a drop down. You choose the SEAHO Report, and then you will get this page. And on this page, you can see all the previous issues of the SEAHO Report going back. I mean, this obviously I cut off the screen, but it goes back many, many years. So you can see I first published in 2006. So check it out. You can see, you can read my Oprah article. But what you need to do is you need to read some of them, get a feel for what they have. And then right here, we have a lovely link. It says, please click here to access the submission form. So you click on that link, and it'll take you to our submission form, which again is way too small for most of y'all to see. But you just put in your information, so your first name, last name, whatever, institution, email address, super important. Put the email address you actually use, because we will reply back to that if we need to make revisions or do something. And then you have to put in the category. So I forgot I have a thing. So is it news? Is it a feature article? Is it a state update? Is it a committee report? Whatever. So you're going to categorize it. And then we simply ask you to attach your article. Our one thing is, please don't send us a PDF. We can't edit a PDF without special software, and it takes a lot of time. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, are there certain page limits or requirements?
Yeah, if a publication has a word count or a page requirement, they're going to put that on there. We don't have one, mostly because most people send to us shorter type articles. If it's too long, we'll get back to you and say, hey, can you cut it down a little bit? Or we recently had one that was a little bit too short, and so we asked them to add a little bit more content to it. Usually I feel like our articles come in around 2,000 words, probably. But again, that's not a requirement for us. So we do not have that written out there because it doesn't, for our publication, we're very open for length. But anyway, so you literally just submit it and turn it in. So it's really easy to submit to the SEAHO report. Another example is in the talking stick. So if you go to the Akuhoai website, they have, you go to their homepage and then you click on knowledge resources. that tab, and then you go to the Talking Stick magazine. And again, they'll take you to a page where you can read previous issues, because you should always read previous issues before you submit. And then it will ask you to, here's a link to submit a story idea form. So if you have an idea for a story for the Talking Stick, you click on this form. And somebody up here is going to be published in the next Talking Stick and just filled out this form, so I'll have her walk you through it.
Thank you. So as Jeannie mentioned, every publication has a different requirement for submitting. So for the SEAHO report, we're asking that you send us your document fully written. When applying to the Talking Stick, they want your idea first, so they don't want your full document yet. So you'll enter it looks like this. Yes, most housing institutions receive a version of the Talking Stick, your AVP or your director or the library. They're also online, but the hard copies are usually mailed to someone in your department. So if you want to check those out or look at them. So you'll enter your demographic information, name, institution, email address, if anyone's co-authoring with you. How long do you think your story will be? So since this is just an idea, are you writing 1,500 words? Are you writing 500 words? Check out those articles that are in the Talking Stick and see what your article would align with to get that number. Your proposed title. And then you would pick what area you think it falls into. And then this is kind of where it seems a little bit like grad school. So you'll write your thesis statement. So if anyone's ever written a thesis statement before, you are essentially putting in there what you're going to do in this article, your main point of the article, and what you're getting to. So you'll write that in there. It's important to be detailed, but not overly detailed. In each of these boxes, once you reach a certain word count, it will cut you off. But it is important that you're giving enough information so that the Talking Stick knows what you mean, because if they don't know what you mean, they do receive a lot of submissions, and so they might not ask questions. They might just say no thank you. And so then you'll write your themes of the story. So you can put up to 3 major themes of your story, which again should be listed in your thesis. These are my 3 themes that I'm doing, and then you'll go into detail in those below. In your themes, put what resources you intend to use to support those themes. You don't have to go in depth because there's another column down here where you put your resources. But resources includes citations that you're going to use, research that you've done, some statistics that you plan to highlight. So put those all in there. In addition, in the Talking Stick, you usually have to incorporate other universities that you've looked at if you're writing articles. So for instance, writing an article on civic engagement, reaching out to a couple other institutions that have done civic engagement things, and putting down like, I intend to use these 3 institutions as well. So once you submit this, it can take a couple months to hear back, or it could take a week. Someone will email you and they'll say, hey, we really like this idea. You put that you're thinking 1,500 words. We're thinking 2,000. Could you do that? And can you have me a draft in 2 weeks? And it's usually a quick turnaround for your draft, even though it's going to take a couple more months after you turn in that draft to hear back. And so then you'll send that in. Usually it takes a while. Sometimes it's pretty quick. It just depends. But for the most part, it takes a couple months. And you'll hear from them there. You'll get your first revision, as Jeannie was saying in her presentation, and you'll make those revisions if you so choose. And then you will potentially do a second revision, but I don't want to step over on your process.
Thank you. So those are 2 examples. There are obviously, we could spend an hour just talking about different ways to submit, so you're going to need to look at that specific publication. But to finish out our thing, so once you submit your article or your draft or whatever, you have possible outcomes, as Bree was just talking about. One outcome is a desk rejection. A desk rejection is a flat-out rejection where they're going to say, sorry, we're not interested in this for our publication. That happens, and it's okay. It doesn't mean that your article wasn't beautiful and maybe just wasn't right for that publication. Or maybe it's something you need to go back, have somebody else look at it, and retool it a little bit. We have done desk rejections from the SEAHO report, and we publish almost everything, but we have had to do some desk rejections. Again, because people send us stuff that has nothing to do with our publication. And so no amount of revision is going to change an article about Greek life into an article about housing. So, yeah. And then the other outcome is that it'll go up for review. So if you're sent to the review stage, usually when an article is reviewed, it's going to be reviewed by one of 2 groups, either a editorial board, which is what we use on the SEAHO report. So Briana and I are the editorial board. We're very powerful. Or it'll go to a peer review board. So most of your scholarly journals or academic journals are going to have a peer review board. But anyway, it's going to be somebody out there who has an expertise in reviewing articles and in that subject matter. And so they're going to actually read your articles, go deep into it, and make sure that the content is up to the standard of their publication. And then after that review, you're going to have more possible outcomes. You could again get a rejection at that point. So possibly it went to review. Those people looked at it deeper and they said, this article's not ready. We're not going to publish this. That could happen. The most common thing is at that point you'll get a revise and resubmit, which means they're going to send it back to you and say, hey, this is great. Here are some revisions that we'd like for you to do, and then we'd like to have you resubmit that for us. Or they could go ahead and accept it for publication at that point. Okay? So after they've accepted it, sometimes we'll go into slight revisions, and then you'll head over to get published. So yay, it's going to be fun. I will say, because people ask me this all the time, at some points we do make the revisions on our own from an editorial standpoint. So if I simply have to go in and change some grammar, something that's not going to actually hinder the editorial content of your article, then we can go ahead and do that on our own without sending it back to you and having you do it. So if I need to change a couple of commas, I'm not going to send that all the way back to you and have you send it back to me. I'm just going to change the commas. And I think we're all going to be okay. However, if the content of what you're saying needs to be adjusted, we will send that back to the author because I don't want to change your words. But anyway, any questions about the flow of getting published? All right, yay. I hope that means we explained it well. So now, Brianna's going to take us through a few quick tips.
So, as we discussed earlier, write about something that you're passionate about. So those ideas that you talked about, people want to hear them. And if you're passionate about it, chances are somebody else is passionate about it and wants to hear about it, or someone's not passionate about it and they can't think of any ideas to do for it because they don't have that passion. And so reading your article helps them to have those ideas to support their students. Number 2, avoid the desk rejection. So make sure you're using the publication guidelines, their length, their subject, their tone. Do that in their request as well. So in your initial proposal, if you're applying to the talking stick, making sure that you're hitting all those areas that they've asked you to hit in that that submission. Read several articles and issues of the publication to which you are submitting to ensure that your article matches and is a good fit for that publication. So again, reading through the talking stick, reading through Inside Higher Ed, reading through the Leadership Exchange. Does my article fit with the type of things that they publish? This one's really important, and you should make sure to do it because I think sometimes we get so overzealous and we're like, I love this article. I worked so hard on it. It has such good content. I'm going to submit it to 5 different places. And that is a huge no. You should not submit your article to more than one publication. And there's a couple of reasons why for that. The number one reason why you shouldn't submit to more than the same article to more than one publication is because publication companies are just that. They're a company. They want to be ahead of the curve. They want to be someone that's leading in their field. And so if you submit to multiple publications and they all accept your submission and then publish it, their magazines do not stand out from each other. And so now they're publishing the same content to all their readers. And so that makes them look bad. And 2, if you say, oh, I'm going to submit this to a bunch of people and then I'll pick which one I want them to keep, that can, on the back end, really hurt you. Because if you're withdrawing a publication from an article that place that you've submitted it to, and then they see it published in another magazine, that tells them that they spent all this time editing, giving you submissions, deciding it was going in, planning for it to be in their publication, and then you just withdrew it. And so on the back end, if you plan to send another submission to them another time, that may not be something that they want to go through again. Yeah. Acknowledge your scholarly work on your topic. So what resources are you using? What citations are you using? What else is out there that you can incorporate in your work to make it more sound and to make it more foundational, especially if it's going into a journal article? Again, with the talking stick, reaching out to those other institutions that you're pulling in to make your idea stand out. Demonstrate how your topic on the angle is unique and important. So this is important because we all have really great things to say, but an article's purpose is to teach something to someone or to give a resource to someone. And so if you're writing about something, you want to be able to provide someone with why your angle from it is important for them to know, and what you've done to make it significant. So if you're writing about something that it happened in your personal life or as a residence life coordinator, but you don't tell me how that impacted your work or what changed to make you start taking care of yourself or those things, there's no purpose in me reading this. Don't be discouraged by revise and submit. It's super common, and it should be, because people that are taking time to peer review your article want you to be a better writer. They don't know you, but they're taking their time to make sure that the article is the best it can be, so that those fears of like putting my work out there is vulnerable. So by the time it gets out there, it's ready to be out there and it's strong to stand on its own. So that's why they do that. Accept feedback from reviewers respectfully, make changes, and submit the letter to the editor outlining your revisions and reasons. So it's very important to take feedback respectfully. We all know this, but sometimes when we've worked really hard on something and someone sends it back and it has all this red ink on it, we are immediately defensive. I worked so hard on that and it was such a good idea. And that's not what they're saying. What they're saying is, I see that you worked hard on this. I believe in this product. Here's some things we need to change to make sure it fits our magazine. If those changes aren't something that you agree with, you can write in that outline, I don't feel comfortable changing this part, but maybe you changed a different part. And being honest about that. If it's still not a good fit for you and not a good fit for them, you don't want to change something in your article that they feel needs to change to match their publication's mission, vision, and values, that's okay. Then you're done, and if you're rejected or just it's not going to work, it's not a good fit, you've both decided it won't be published there, then you can submit your article somewhere else. As long as both you and the publisher are on the same page about this isn't a good fit and I don't want to change that. Even if rejected, take comments from reviewers seriously. So again, they're taking time to invest in your publication and in you as a professional by providing that feedback. They're saying, hey, this is good, but we just need to change this to make sure that it's solid before we put it out there. Be patient. It takes quite a bit of time. So as I was talking about earlier, it can take months. An example that I have of that is at LSU, our professors are required to to publish 2 things a year, which means that they will most likely submit 6 things a year, and only 2 of those within that year will get published. And so that's not the case for everywhere, but in a lot of scholarly journal articles and things like that, it's important that you give yourself time, because those publishers are reading multiple things and they may already have the next issue planned out, so your publication might not even be until the next semester or year. So it's important to know that. And then proofread your stuff. So there is an editorial team. We will review it and provide edits. However, it's also important that you proofread. And if you're worried about grammar or things like that, and a good resource that you can use that's free is Grammarly. It's online. You can download it and pay for like better versions, or you can use it just to do a quick check of your stuff with the free version, and it'll tell you about commas, colons, things like that maybe you misplaced.
Almost finished. We're almost out of time. But really quick, I wanted to highlight some resources. This first one is a video that Higher Ed Live did that's a really great resource on how to get published. So it's a different take than what we did, and so if you're interested in that, check it out. Talk to other people who've been published, talk to your supervisors, whatever. But I do think, and I've said it a million times and I apologize, but the publication itself is the best resource. I brought some with me because I just wanted to show you. People are often like, I have no idea how to get published. Okay, it's in the book. Like, this is the Journal of College and University Student Housing. Great, yay. In the back of the book, it literally says, author guidelines, publication schedule, manuscript submissions, manuscript review process. I mean, it takes you step by step with bullet points and numbers of how to submit and how to get published. It's not a secret. There's no secret formula. It's not anything. It's right there. It tells you how to do it. So I brought a bunch of, the Journal of College Student Development, same thing. It even tells you how to do a book review versus a regular article, because they have a whole different layout for them. So it's not hidden information that only certain people know. It's right out there. It just nobody flips to that page. So no secrets. You can do it. So we're about out of time, but any questions for us? Yes, ma'am.
So for individuals who have been far removed from education,
Yes.
What would be some additional resources to assist with being sharpened with APA and different formatting for different publications outside of SEAHO Report?
Yeah, I think that her question was if you haven't been in education for a while and you need a refresher basically on APA or whatever format the publication is using. I would go to those style guides themselves, so you can do that. The publications have it outlined exactly what style guide they use. And honestly, having a friend or somebody else review it for you is, in my opinion, the easiest way to get help with that. I'm always happy to look at stuff. Like, for real, I'm not just saying that. We are the SEAHO Report editors, and so not only are we here, our mission is to help get people in SEAHO published, not just in SEAHO Report. So if you want us to look at your stuff for something else, I am happy to do that. I love to read stuff, and I love to help people, so hey, bring it on. That's what I do in my free time, because I'm a nerd. But I think just having somebody who you trust read your stuff and give you honest feedback is probably the best way to do it. Any other questions? I'm really excited to see what you guys have to say. So I really hope that you do submit some stuff and get your words out there. So thank you guys. Yes, April 9th for the SEAHO Report. Thank you guys.